Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this HD webinar on promoting pork exports to the overseas markets. I'm Andrew Palmer, Knowledge Exchange Relationship Manager for the pork sector within the at AHDB. Today, we are going to be hearing from members of the International Marketing and Exports team, giving us an insights into some of the world's markets at the current time, and also the work involved into accessing some of these new markets. Just a little bit of housekeeping to start with, please. Can I ask that all microphones are switched off if they're not already been switched off automatically, and also please keep your cameras off just to help with the recording quality of this webinar. Any questions, please feel free to put it in the questions box, which is on the tab on your screen there. And also we are planning to run for an hour maximum and finish with the questions at the end. Also, the webinar will be recorded and this recording link will be sent within 24 hours after the meeting is closed. So today's running order, I've just made the introductions myself, that's me. First, and then we'll be hearing from Phil Hadley, who will give us a bit of an overview of exporting pork to the world. And then we have a recorded session from Waffa Doxon, who will be giving us a little bit of an insight into the work that goes behind the scenes when we're accessing new markets around the world. And then we have Susanna Morris, who will give us an update on the activity in the Americas. And lastly, but not least, Susanna Stewart will be giving us an insight into the export work in Asia. Then we'll hold a Q&A session at the end, where we'll be hopefully answer all your questions. And please feel free to come on your cameras at that session if you want to ask the question live. But also please feel free to use the question box as I mentioned previously. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Phil Hadley to start the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Good to be here. As you said, I'm just going to give an overview of the work of AHDB on the export markets, why it's important, and the general sort of background to what we do before Waffa, Susanna and Susan will talk in more detail about the access process and their specific markets. So next slide, please. As a bit of an overview, the work that we undertake on behalf of levy payers to access and exploit market opportunities and market potential in overseas countries, the opportunities that presents to the sector, and the work that underpins it. And you see there the picture of a typical trade stand on an international market trying to attract international buyers for our levy payers. Okay, next slide, please. So our mission at AHDB is to enable farming success, and that includes export promotion and also making our agri-food exports more competitive overseas, whilst also not forgetting that we export in times of surplus or to balance the carcass, etc., but that it does offer particular opportunities for particular products or at particular times of year. Seasonality less important for the pork sector, of course, but all those things mean that you've got the opportunity to sell the products at the highest price to the market that is most willing to pay for them. And our role really is to facilitate and make that happen. Next slide, please. So why export? If you click on, yeah. So to optimize returns across the supply chain and really maximize the value of each and every part from each and every animal. And that really is around selling the right product to the right market at the right price at the right time. And of course, you can only do that if you have firstly the market access in the first instance, but then the right connections and the right buyers to actually make that happen. And why do we do that? Well, to balance the carcass, the parts of the carcass that we don't consume in the UK or has little value or low demand. Often those overseas markets, particularly in Asia, demand those products and often pay very strong prices for them. So it adds to the value of the overall animal. That's the carcass balance aspect. It adds value. Sometimes there are opportunities to sell premium products at premium prices in particular markets. I'm sure Susanna will touch on the American market and the success story that's been for particular premium pork type products. And then the market access work that underpins being able to undertake the commercial trade. As I say, if you don't have access, there are no commercial opportunities. That's fairly clear. Next slide, please. So in terms of AHDB exports, on the red meat side, I mean, exports are critically important to the red meat sector for the carcass balance and the value add discussions. And the value of red meat exports in total in 2021 was around 1.4 billion, which really underpins the importance of exports to the red meat sectors. And for pork in particular, it was 567 million. So a significant amount of value added to across the supply chain as a result of being able to export our products to some key international markets. It remains important for balancing the carcass and adding value, as I've touched on. And we always look to opportunities to build the reputation of British pork overseas based on the USPs that we have: outdoor production, high welfare, low antibiotic usage, etc. But underpinned by the really strong story that we're a producer of safe and reliable quality products. You don't get market access unless you can demonstrate that that is the case. And we've been very successful in securing new market access in the last 5 years or so, working in strong partnership with government and industry. Okay, next slide, please. Just very briefly, I won't talk in detail about this, but it charts the growth of exports across the three species. Sheep meat and beef, relatively stable. Of course, we've had long-term access to those European markets. From the pork sector's point of view, a lot of our product is going further afield to third countries, Asian markets in particular, and Susan will pick up in those in some detail. And that's where we've seen the growth opportunity over that last 10 or 15-year horizon, following the success of ongoing access being secured. You'll notice a drop-off in 2021, and there are a number of background reasons for that, including trade disruption as a result of ASF in the Asian basin, COVID, strong domestic demand, closure of food service, a lot of competing factors in 21. But trade data year to date is showing some encouraging signs of recovery, particularly in certain markets. So we're enthused by what might come, what's coming next in the following year and onward. Next slide, please. So from an AHDB point of view, what do? We do the technical market access work and all the behind the scenes administration work that supports that. And I'll leave that to Waffa to go into detail on in her presentation next. But we work very closely with UK government departments like DEFRA, Animal Plant Health Agency, Food Standards Agency, etc. And via the UK Export Certification Partnership to really identify and push forward our market access requirements. And that gives the trade the greatest opportunity to be able to sell their products overseas. Once the access is almost there or is granted, we then, Susan and colleagues step in, and they kind of then lead the market development activity to those new and growing markets via a range of things like trade shows, buyer forums, promotional and press activities, which creates that platform and presence for our levy payers to have that exchange to develop those commercial links. We have a strong in-market presence in some key markets that support that work, gather intelligence, and act as a platform or a catalyst for AHDB overseas, including key markets like China, Hong Kong, the US, Japan, the Middle East, and into the Americas more broadly. And we work very closely overseas with the UK government network through the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, DIT and other departments, the Department for International Trade. And I've made a reference there to the Agricultural Councillor in Beijing. That's a UK government appointment, which up until recently was largely levy funded. And that's been really, really important in securing our access and driving forward our requirements to develop that market in China, which we know is critically important to the success of the global pork industry. Okay, next slide, please. This just, I won't talk in detail on this one, but it just visualises where we have a footprint and a representative in countries as AHDB. And this often surprises levy payers that our reach is into countries such as China, Japan, and over to the west into the US. These roles are important to create those relationships and get those platforms and have those dialogues for those commercial opportunities and deliver the activities in country. And particularly during the COVID time, where there's been a restriction on travel, having in-country representatives has meant that activity can continue in the absence of being able to travel anywhere from the UK. Okay, next please. So recent wins on the market access front. We've had success in Japan for beef and lamb, Taiwan for pork, China for pork and beef, and I won't go through that list there, but we often secure access first for pork and then start dialogues for the ruminant species after the pork trade has started. Pork's an easier ask. It doesn't have some of the historic disease issues that the ruminant sector does. And an example of that would be Taiwan. We've had access to Taiwan. There's an inward audit from the Taiwanese to seek lamb approval due into the UK. Just very recently, we've had an inward audit from Vietnam, and we see that as another market in that Asian region that has potential for UK pork. Now travel's becoming possible again. We have an ongoing market access brief, which will see more inward audit inspections, which will lead to more access and more countries being available. On the development side, we've been using digital platforms for the international markets to make sure that in the absence of travel and trade shows that UK product is still at the forefront of buyers' minds and those connections are still present. So having effectively what we're doing now, webinars with overseas buyers to promote the product, and in some cases they've sat in rooms and tasted the product whilst they've had presentations from UK sellers and from people like the team to demonstrate the product and really keep the presence there in the absence of a physical presence. And we've also built a suite of digital resources to promote in those key markets. And we won't have time to see the link there, but if you Google that message that's on there via YouTube, you'll find an example of the type of high quality video collateral that we use to promote the product in overseas markets. Next, please. So in terms of, where does UK sit? Well, in some cases it's commodity products and in other cases it's premium products, but reputation is important. We're competing on price, we're competing for those added value aspects. So, the global industry responds to positives and challenges. Export growth for the UK has been, particularly the pork sector, has been really encouraging. And we have to continue to underpin our messages around the quality of the product, the care for the environment, the animal welfare aspects, the things that make us different, that we can champion our products and interest both commercial buyers and the consumer to seek and premiumise and preferentially select our products. So that underpinning reputation story is really important in being successful on those export markets. Some countries, like the Asian countries, it might be about food safety. America might be about animal welfare, for example. So we also have to understand the market drivers and the purchase drivers in each and every country to make sure we dial up the right message to have the greatest impact. And I'll touch on our MI support in just a moment. Okay, next slide, please. And an example here of the types of stand that we would have in overseas markets that would promote to buyers. So lots of trade fairs in some key markets where we'd have a stand that would promote a very clear message about origin via the Great brand, which is a UK government brand. And you can see the imagery there, clean presentation of the product. And we would be joined on those stands by the commercial sellers to create those networking platforms for our levy payers to meet with buyers in given countries. So that's an example of the trade stand type of work. Next slide, please. And then, of course, pictures on the left there was from Anuga in October, the first major European food fair post the COVID period, and some pictures there on the right of promoting the product overseas to buyers to get that message across. And again, those events have taken place in the absence of travel through our representatives, and Susan will go on and talk a little bit more around some of that activity in just a moment. Okay, next one, please. And I touched on the market insight there as well. One of the roles that we also do through our market intelligence team is explore different markets and the attitudes, the British, the purchase drivers, the information that underpins those market dynamics, who the competitors are, etc. A raft of information, both to help us understand what the market opportunities are, but exporters as well. So we have a clear vision of what markets offer the greatest potential for what products and who you're competing for, and what those stories or messages need to look like. Okay, next one, please. So just to sum up my sort of introductory slot, exports continue to be a critical part of what AHDB does for levy payers and on behalf of levy payers. And the recent Shape the Future vote has come out strongly to support the export activity, and levy payers see that as a core part of the role and the value of the levy. We're adapting our approach and continue to grow our approach to have a presence in those overseas markets to deliver the greatest opportunity and understand those markets intimately to grow that market growth potential. That helps us deliver on the ground with partners including UK government, and UK government are currently recruiting a number of agriculture councillors using the levy funded China model in key export destinations, and that will be a critical role again to secure and grow market opportunities for, in our case, the red meat and dairy sector, but more broadly the food sector in its widest context. And we continue to improve our consumer insight, so we have the best information when we go into a market to ensure that we're as effective as we possibly can be. And then finally, of course, it's essential that we maintain, strengthen and further improve the reputation of British products, British pork and Britain per se as a supplier of great, safe, wholesome, quality food, so we can really capitalise on those opportunities. Okay, many thanks. I'll hand back to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for that overview of the work and just the generic stuff and the background behind all the export work. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. Can I just remind, if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat box. Now we're going to hear from Waffa Doxon, who does a lot of behind the scenes work regards to when what Phil's just touched on, regards to opening markets up and the admin and the visits, etc., that go behind these these new market access. Now this is a recording. One or two of you might just hit a technical problem on this, but please bear with it. So I think it's about 6 or 7 minutes long. But what will work is you will be able to hear it back on the recording link back when you get the link in the next 24 hours. So we'll listen to Waffa now. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to apologize for not being able to join you today as I am on annual leave, but I'm hoping this is something you will understand. Having said that, I did put my contact detail in the last slide should you have any follow-up question. I will start my presentation by giving a brief overview of my role. So as a market access manager, my role involves facilitating the opening of new markets while improving access to existing markets across the red meat sector. To that purpose, I work closely with UK Gov, in particular DEFRA, the Food Standard Agency, and APHA, and with you, existing and potential exporters. Key aspects of my work include leading on third country risk assessment questionnaires, which basically provide an initial desk-based risk assessment of the UK veterinary system, arranging audit visits, and dealing with export-related issues. To help to better understand my role, I will start by giving a brief overview of the market access process flow, followed by an update of our market access activities in Asia and the Americas. Market access process is a slow and time-consuming exercise which involves a number of steps. Some of the key steps include market identification. This initial step, based on intel and market research, aims to identify and prioritize our export market. The next step is to officially declare our interests, and this involves an official correspondence from the UK Chief Veterinary Officer, CVO. The reply to the UK CVO letter will include a risk assessment questionnaire. And I have to say that the completion and submission of the risk assessment questionnaire is a crucial step. The reason being is because this questionnaire is used to carry an initial death risk assessment of the UK veterinary system. And the outcome of this initial assessment will inform the third country on how to proceed with our application. The next stage, audit, or also known as inward inspection visit. And I have to stress that this is a decisive step in gaining entry to a new market. The overall objective of the audit is to verify and assess information that we previously supplied in the questionnaire and to evaluate official controls for the production of meat. The outcome of the audit will inform the third country decision on whether or not to grant us market access. Once access is granted, then technical discussion with the importing country on defining and agreeing export requirements and export documentation such as export health certificate take place. Once export documentation is agreed, the final stage is listing. And this is where UK sites, providing that they meet the export requirements, are then added to the official list of UK establishments authorized to export. Once listed, export can then commence using the newly agreed export health certificate. I will now provide a brief update of our market access activities in Asia. The COVID situation has brought a number of trade restrictions which unfortunately affect some of our pork exporters. Since then, there have been ongoing discussions between UK officials in London and in Beijing and the Chinese authority to remedy the situation. This continuous effort has led to virtual audits to take place before Christmas. So this is pretty much work in progress. Despite all those challenges, China remains a market priority for pork. To that purpose, we are exploring expanding the scope of pork export to include some edible byproduct. In 2017, the UK submitted a risk assessment questionnaire for beef, lamb, and pork. Since then, there had been a lot of back and forth and requests for clarification from Vietnam. Pre-COVID, Vietnam did say they wanted to focus only on pork. So there had been an ongoing engagement from the UK despite COVID-19 situation. And I have to say it's crucial that we keep engaging with our existing and potential trading partner to ensure that the UK remains on top of the list. Because we have to remember we are competing against the rest of the world to secure an audit and gain access to a new market. And I'm glad to say that the ongoing communication paid off, as in mid-May, HDB, in partnership with DEFRA and UKCP, hosting a pork inward mission from Vietnam. The scope of the export is to include meat, edible byproduct, and offal. As a next step, Vietnam will share in the next few months its audit report with DEFRA, who will then liaise with other UK Gov and industry to draft a response. Market access work is not only about opening new market, it's also about maintaining access to existing market. So we gained access to Taiwan pork market in 2018. Our export arrangement is dependent on our animal health status for certain conditions. So on behalf of DEFRA, I'm leading on completing a series of risk assessment questionnaires to demonstrate our animal health status freedom for certain conditions, including classical swine fever and African swine fever. Looking at a different commodity, just to be aware that sheep meat market is also a priority for Taiwan and that we are due to host an inward inspection visit in the autumn. So looking at the Americas, in South America, our focus is primarily on pork. We have been working since 2018 to enter Mexico pork market, and in 2021, Mexico pork access was finally granted. However, I have to say that this access partially delivered what we set to achieve, as we've only gained access to pork whole muscle. Nonetheless, our ambition to open the market more widely to include offal and edible byproduct remains. So I worked with UK Gov and industry in completing our UK pork dossier, which DEFRA submitted to the Mexican authorities for review. Mexico pork market remains a UK market priority for us, and this new market is worth an estimated 50 million over the next 5 years. We recently gained access to Chile pork market. The Chilean pork market is worth an estimated 20 million to the sector over the first 5 years. And I wanted to share the good news that our first port consignment is on its way to Chile. The UK currently has access to beef, lamb, and pork market. As part of our UK beef and pork access arrangement, a review audit of exporting site is carried out every 3 years. However, due to COVID-19 situation, the US agreed to carry a remote audit only involving DEFRA and UK Gov, with no site engagement. Having said that, documents from 3 selected sites, each representing a different species, were reviewed. So, the pork, beef and lamb virtual audit of the UK competent authority ran for 7 weeks and concluded on the 24th of June 2022. The UK is expecting to receive the audit report within the next 60 days and will have in return 60 days to address the report. To note that since gaining access, pork export went up by 20% to reach 23.5 million in 2021. Thank you for listening to my presentation. If you have any question, please feel free to email it to me at wafa.dodson@hdb.org.uk.
Thank you, Wafa. A virtual thank you for that. I hope that just gives a little bit of an insight into the work that goes on in opening markets, and also the paper trail and all the vet stuff and all the trades involved, etc. sort of thing. So it's a full team effort. You know, when we just get to see sometimes the shining lights of a new market open, but sometimes these processes can take 2, 3, several years to get going, as you saw in some of Wafa's timelines. Right, we're going to hand over to Susanna now, who's going to give us a little bit more detail of some of the pig meat and promotional work in the Americas.
Thank you, Andrew, and good afternoon to you all. For those who don't know me, my name is Susanna Morris, and I'm the Senior Export Manager for the Americas. Next slide, please, Andrew. As you have heard from Wafa, she looks after opening the markets, and once these markets are open, that is when us come in. And for this instance, what I do is to develop the markets in the Americas. My markets at the moment that I'm working with is Canada for the 3 species, the US for beef and pork, Mexico for pork, Chile for pork, and also Dominican Republic for the 3 species. So as you can see, this is what we have been doing from the start of this year. We started in California, in Beverly Hills, where we had a private event where we were promoting beef, pork, and dairy products. Then the week after, we went to Seattle, America. This was a very new market, but we did have the interest of around 10 exporters at this show. 3 of them were from the pig meat sector. And as this was a new show, we didn't expect much, and also because the United States were opening after COVID. So it was a little bit slow, but we did have quite a few good contacts. We had a bit of a breather, and then we started flying again, and the next protocol was Toronto. This was the RC show in Toronto, which is a show for the food service. Again, we had the company of 2 exporters, one for beef and one for pork. And we had, with the 3 of these shows, we had tastings, and also we had a butchery presentation, which the butchery presentation always go down very well because we got a different way of butchering our products. After the show, I went over to Mexico, and with the help with DAT, the lady that I've got here, I don't know if you can say her, is Ana Fernanda. She organized a few meetings during the show, and which I was pleased to meet with quite important importers in Mexico. And this gave me a little bit more of a feel of the market and to know who is who. While I was there in Mexico, I had the opportunity to visit Proan, a really big processing company there in Mexico. Just to say that Jalisco, which is one of the states in Mexico, is one of the major producers of pig meat in the country. And this was a very new company, probably 5 years old, with loads of space for expansion. They employ people of around the area, and also they look after the employees, giving them a lot of space while during the COVID restrictions. Then in June, we had a one-day mission from representative of a company called Sucarne. They came into London, and I was able to organize for them a few presentations from our exporters who are listed to be able to export to Mexico. And also we had presentations about animal welfare, sustainability, and the work that we have done for reducing antibiotics in the pig herd. Next slide, please, Andrew. I'm not going to emphasize on this too much because already Phil and Wafa have been talking about it. Just that our newest markets in the area is Mexico and Chile. Next slide, Andrew. Thank you very much. Here are the how we're doing on data in United States. In a whole, is quite positive. But as Phil was saying, it's not only good just to have market access in a market. We just have to have the right market access, because otherwise we might just get a little bit into trouble, like it happened in United States with pig meat. We were doing quite well, and especially in 2018, and then we were hit with the import tariff, which the tariff was around 25%, that really this started to slow down our exports to United States, as you can see here. In 2020, we really went very low with our exports, but thankfully, in June 2020, that 25% tariff was removed, and again, we started to grow on our exports. So really, to get the right access to a market is crucial, not only in quota, but also in tariff, because at the moment, I know this is not pig meat, but also in we're having a little bit of a bother with the quota with beef to United States. The quota is being filled by the exports of Brazil. So at the moment, we're not able to export beef meat to United States, which is really a shame. Next slide, please. Here is an interesting market. This is Canada. It's a little bit fickle. I mean, it's a very nice market. It's not as big as United States. I mean, Canada geographically is large, but in population is small. I mean, the state of California in United States is bigger than the whole population of Canada, for example. So we started very slow, but then COVID hit, and we found there are a really good opportunity for us to start exporting more of our products there. And also there's other reasons why our product is quite successful. Canada has a very strong food processing industry, which is the third largest manufacturing industry in Canada. So there's loads of small manufacturing companies that are specialized in smoke meats and sausages. Also, it's worth mentioning that the Canadians, of Chinese ethnic origin is quite an important one. It's up to about 5.1% of the Canadian population, which is around 1.77 million, and they take a lot of offals into the market. Only last year in 2021, just for offals, they had a value of 1.7 million, and we exported around 362,000 tons. Also, it's worth saying that we do have a trade agreement with Canada, and that helps. And also, which is very interesting, the Canadian consumer is very well informed and looks for products that they are sustainably produced and healthy, and I think we are able to offer that. As I was doing a little bit of research, I came across a quote of a marketeer, which I'm going to read to you. It's called Seth Godin. You may have heard of him. And it really is quite timely, because it's exactly what we're doing right now in our markets in the Americas. He says, marketing is not longer about the products that we make, but about the stories you tell. So really just putting in a really nice package of all the things that goes behind our products, that's what sells, and that's what makes us different, and that is the way that we can fight price comparisons. Next slide, please, Andrew. Right, this is the little jewel in the Caribbean. Again, it started very slow, and it started to grow and grow, and that is because Dominican Republic imports loads of offal, and that's because the country has a very important food processing sector, similar to Canada, and obviously the main ingredient is meat. They are currently being hit by the African swine fever, and the news came last year during July 2021, and Dominican Republic have lost 20% of the pig meat production. So that has increased the imports of pork, and while the pig meat in United States in the last few months, the price was quite high, that's given us a little bit of an opportunity for us to get into this market and increase our exports. Also, another point is that tourism is starting to open again and to go on to this country, and also food service is opening up, and that always helps. Next slide, please, Andrew. Right, this is just to give you a bit of a taster of what's going on in the region, and that is exports year to date in May. So everything is green, and the percentages are quite considerably. So I'm not going to read you all, but I just included 2 extra ones. This is Trinidad and Tobago. So very slowly and quietly, they have been importing some of our products. And then the great good news is that we already exported some products to Chile. Next slide, please. This is the other kind of work that we do in the markets. We got in United States a website that promotes who we are, what we do. Also, just recently, we have appointed a new social media company that will start next month to start promoting again the benefits to buying our products, what we are about, the work on reducing antibiotics, the sustainability, the grass management that we do with beef and with lamb, etc. And then we do have a small marketing agency that help us to connect with suppliers there in market when we want to organize a private event, because sometimes it's very difficult to do it from here because of the time difference, especially if we want to do something in California. Next slide, please. And this is our upcoming events. So we are already busy planning what to do for next year. So next month we will be going over to Chile between the 27th to the 29th of September, promoting pig meat for the first time in the country in Espacio Food and Service. Following that, in November, we will have a private event called Quality Meat and Dairy Event. And I'm crossing my fingers here. Apart from promoting beef and pork, we would like to launch sheep meat there for the first time in many years. So, but let's see. Let's not get too excited and see if that could happen. I have included here Mexico, and that will be for February in Nuevo León. That only if we are able to gain access to export offals to Mexico. And then finally, the last event, it will be the annual meat conference in Texas, and that will be from the 6th to the 8th of March. Hopefully, we will bring over a mission over to United States, especially also for promoting lamb, but also for people to reconnect with our pig meat exporters and also beef. So as I say, there will be a conference where we can learn about the US market, and also we'll have a small presence with a stand. And that is everything for me. So if you've got any questions, you can either email me or you can ask me any questions after the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. Really interesting to see the depth and the different countries involved now with our export markets. So that's really good. Thank you very much. And finally, last but not least, Susan's now going to speak about the work in Asia. I'll hand over to Susan.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for listening in this afternoon. My name's Susan Stewart, and I look after our activity across the Asia region for AHDB and our levy payers. Today, I'm just going to quickly give you a whistle-stop tour of what we're up to, our key markets, our activity, and what our future plans are for the rest of the year. Just move on slides, please. So the Asia region for AHDB, if you just do the animations, is basically India, China, across to Taiwan, Japan, and all the way down to Australia and New Zealand. And we're working across these markets, both ourselves and with a range of local partners. So as Phil touched on earlier on, we have Holly Chen based in Beijing, who's been really critical to what we do in China over the last couple of years when we've been unable to travel. She's on the ground, she's really well connected with the pork trade in China and is still running the on-the-ground events where COVID's prevented travel into China. We're also working with a network of marketing agencies. So we have Sapexa based in Japan, and Media Plus that covers China and Taiwan, and the range of British chambers as well across the region. So we get really good coverage and maximising our impact for levy payers. Next slide, please. So I've touched on a few of our key markets here. China, Asia in itself is around 40% of our pork exports, and China is around half of that again. So China really is a huge market, which is importing a lot of protein. Some of the other markets that we'll be doing a lot of work in will be Taiwan, the Philippines, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Japan. And these markets will take a range of different products, very different from the UK, you know, from kind of the low end offal products that would be shipping, all the way through to the very high end sausages, for example, that would be sold into Singapore. And these are really key for carcass balance and maximising our opportunity. Next slide, please. So the goals of what we're trying to do when we're out in market promoting is really all about giving our levy payers and the relevant sectors a platform to do business, whether that's developing relationships to those relevant sectors, showcasing premium products into a high value market such as Singapore, or fifth quarter exports into a price sensitive market such as the Philippines. It's positioning the UK as the place of choice for people to purchase that protein. And as we're getting back out and traveling again, following a couple of years of not being able to, getting back in front of customers is really important for developing that local insight, trade and market understanding, to ensure that we are the place of choice for purchase. Next slide, please. And we're doing that through a range of activity. So trade shows historically have been really important for what we're doing. And we see that becoming more important, in particular for Asia, where those relationships are really key for doing business. People in Asia, they really like to meet people, understand their business before doing business. Partly because of that is due to some of the country's legal systems, where there isn't a legal system, so actually you really need to trust the people that you're dealing with. And as we're coming out of COVID, we're seeing that becoming more and more important. We were in Singapore earlier this year with a small stand to start to develop the trade, and where we've been unable to travel, in Japan earlier this year, for example, we've worked with local partners to deliver those events. So we still have a presence, but without the travel, to use that as a good networking platform and still maintain our position in the market. Next slide, please. So the other work that we're starting to do again, and meeting people in person, developing those relationships, is through missions. And missions are really important to allow exporters to see the market, understand the market, and perhaps see what's done differently. For example, there's a picture of a wet market in the Philippines where people would go to buy their meat. Some very different products to what we'd see in butchers' shops in the UK or in retailers, and a very different way of presenting products. So a very different experience perhaps to going shopping in Tesco's or Sainsbury's. And these missions are really important again for developing those relationships, and as we're coming out of COVID and travel again, meeting people again, rekindling those relationships, understanding perhaps who those key purchasers are in those markets. Perhaps people have changed, moved on to different businesses, and that gives a great opportunity to build those networks again and start to meet people. and really, again, understand any changes in that market. Next slide, please. Alongside this, we'll often run a very targeted showcasing event. So this would be showcasing British pork to a key group of people. Maybe it'll be food service, media, and that would involve, getting people together, offering them some taste and experience of British pork to then encourage purchase. We've done this through a range of things. This could be bringing people together on quite a small scale, so sort of an intimate dinner of some high-end chefs and decision makers, or a larger media event where we're trying to get people together. They enjoy a meal of British pork, and then they tell their networks and their friends about what a great afternoon or evening they've had, and then wanting to buy more. And building our reputation for British pork. Next slide, please. Alongside the events, trade shows, missions, and travel, we've also been involved in quite a lot of digital activity, and we see this continuing as the world opens up a bit more. So we have a WeChat platform, for example, in China, where Facebook's enabled to be used, or Instagram. We have a Facebook page running in Japan and Taiwan, as well as a website in various markets as well, so that people can find us and understand what we're about. Also doing work with influencers, so people that have those good networks in markets, so bringing them, showing them British pork, having an experience, and then putting that out on their channels to showcase what's going on. And also webinars. Picture there of a webinar we held in the Philippines at the end of last year. What we also find is working really well. I call them kind of a hybrid event. It's a picture of one that we did in Japan, where we were unable to travel from the UK. Bringing people together in a room allowed them to taste product and experience it, and it becomes an event. And then we dial in from the UK also, and potentially run some matchmaking, so you can meet businesses alongside it. And we found these to be really successful as people kind of got tired of being on Zoom every day. This kind of revitalized that, of bringing people together to an event, and then we would join via Zoom or Teams to help develop that. Next slide, please. And as we're coming into the autumn, the signs are good for travel. We're expecting to be back out on the road, back out seeing people, meeting people. We'll be in Singapore in September at FHA. FHA is a pretty key trade show for the Southeast Asian region. It would attract a good wide range of people from Southeast Asia as well as Singapore. So Singapore in itself may well be a smaller market, but it's got a much larger reach, being a hub for the Southeast Asian region. We're hopeful to be able to do some promotional activity in China and a couple of trade shows towards the back end of the year in Shanghai. Obviously, this is dependent on the COVID situation over there, but we're hopeful that we'll be able to continue what we're doing over there. And we're hopeful that, as I touched on earlier on, that we'll have access for Vietnam, and we'll be over there in December with a mission and a trade show to really kickstart the trade in Vietnam with a new market, and working with local partners to deliver that. Next slide, please. So thank you for listening. I hope that was insightful. It was a very quick tour, whistle-stop tour of what's going on across the Asia region. If you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them, or just drop me an email on the email address above. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. Lovely, great presentation to end with, and all the work that's happening across Asia. We've got 3 or 4 minutes for a few questions. There's none in the chat at the moment, but I've got a few here that was sent a little bit earlier. I'll give Susan a rest. I'm going to go back to Phil, if you want to put your camera on, Phil. We've heard a lot about Britain's UK meats USP. What's our USP when you go to a new market or to a new country? In a short sentence, what is the definition of UK meat? What makes us different out there, sort of thing?
Well, that depends on the market, Andrew, really. I mean, the story for us, if we pick on the US, for example, it's really quite different in terms of their indoor intensive feedlot type reared system that's largely a grain-based production for certainly for beef. And the products can sometimes be quite different. So, if you're in the US, you dial up the animal welfare aspects, the industry push to reduce antibiotics and have minimal vet med intervention. But if you're in Asia, you talk about the food safety credentials, and of course the use of vet med comes into that. So at every point we're trying to tell the good story about UK and British pork and compare it to the market, but not, you don't denigrate the domestic product as well. Our product finds a space in the market based on our unique credentials, really. So that's not a straight answer, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all market. That's why it's important to understand what drives consumer purchase, so you can pick the right message for the right market.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you, Phil. Question for Susanna. We've seen a little bit in the presentations about the synergy of the working of the different sectors when you go to different countries, whether it be the beef, the lamb, the pork, or the dairy. How important is that mix or that suitcase of products you've got when you go to a different country, to using each one as a foot to get in the door, should I say?
I think it's very important, because each one of the sectors, they got the really good stories to tell. I mean, it's very good. I mean, we had just an inward mission for sheep only 2-3 weeks ago from United States. And although I've been saying to these guys previous to the mission, I'm talking to them about the welfare, traceability and all of that. For them, it was very difficult to visualize all of this. And the moment they came into the UK, and they started talking to the farmers and seeing the passion of the farmers when talking about the work they do every single day, and that will go the same with the pig farmers. I mean, I've seen pig farms that they know the names of their pigs, of their herd. So and they know when a pig is ill or it needs some attendance or anything. That the visitors were able to see that and see the environment and where the animal is growing, and also their knowledge of the farmer, and all of that is part of the background of what we promote as welfare, outdoor bred or traceability. It's a whole package, and that is so powerful. And then the visitors then forget about price, because we have such a good produce, and for example in pig, on pork, we're so different to the US. In the US it's all about numbers, big enterprises. We are a bit smaller, and I think we look after our product much better, and I think that as I say, is very powerful.
Thank you, Susanna. Question for Susan from our good friend, Mr. Hugh Crabtree. When in the Asian markets investigating export opportunities, do you come across examples of pork food service that we might be able to bring to the UK? For example, Magic Wok or BBQ restaurants or other pork fast food chains?
Oh, definitely. There's always new and interesting ways that you find things being cooked when you're out in different places. And I think the UK is very lucky in the sense that we've had immigration from around a range of different places. So we see some of that coming to the UK. You know, we see in London Korean barbecue restaurants, for example, coming in, or you go into Chinatown in London and you'll find, you know, fairly authentic Chinese dumplings and things that have been brought in through immigration. And I mean, having experienced pork cake for my birthday when I was in Shanghai, that probably wasn't the thing to bring to the UK. As I was biting into this lovely cake, and suddenly I thought, God, what the hell is that? It tastes like meat. It feels like meat. And then I got told it was pork cake, and it actually was meat. So I wonder if that's a unique opportunity, perhaps, for the British pig sector.
Lovely, thanks, Susan. Right, we're a minute, 2 minutes over now, so I'm gonna wrap the webinar up. I'd just like to, I hope you've enjoyed today's webinar, and thank you again for taking the time to listen in. I'd like to thank all the speakers, and also Christian, who is behind the scenes working all the technical wizardry on the webinar program as well. Thank you very much for that. And also, can I ask for everyone who's listening in just to take a few minutes at the end of the webinar when it closes, just to fill in the questionnaire at the end. That will help us with future webinars going forward, and any ideas for any new areas to cover. So thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody.
Bye.